I'm Rochelle. I'm the founder of Escaping Your Comfort Zone, which is Body Positive Adventures. One of the things that I'm quite frequently asked is about first aid kits. So I just wanted to go through a couple of scenarios with you today. There's a whole lot of different first aid kits on the market, and you need to have a think about what kind of walking you're going to do, where you're going to be, and the key thing is how long it might take for help to get to you. So if you are doing like one of the greater metro walks, things like Listerfield, things like Gels Park, Altona Foreshore, down Geelong, the Yuyangs, you don't need a huge first aid kit because ultimately, first of all, there's a lot of other people around, and second of all, getting help is generally quite fast. That's not to say that you don't need a first aid kit. If you are joining any of our hikes, you must carry one. Your health is your responsibility, so please remember that. And it's up to you to work out what you want to put in your first aid kit. So there is there's a few out there on the market. This is just a range of different sizes I have. I also have a big box one for the car as well. So if we look at, say, the smallest one here, I'll open this up. So this is just, I think this was under $10 from Bunnings. So what you're going to find in a first aid kit like this is a triangle bandage. You're going to find little scissors that probably aren't that great. You're going to find a couple of little bandages, and you're going to find a lot of band-aids, right? And then you're going to find some dressing, some antiseptic wipes. There's a face mask in there, so on and so forth. What I generally would say is that when you get your first aid kit, have a look at it, then add the bits that you think you will need. And if you don't know what you're going to need, have a think about things like this. So when it comes to band-aids, do you have a favourite brand of band-aids? Sometimes when you get first aid kits like this, they're cheap and nasty band-aids. So have a think about whether you would prefer to use a different brand of band-aid and replace those. Have a think about whether you want to take Panadol or Nurofen, and also another key one is antihistamine. So antihistamine is great not just for hay fever, but also great for stings and bites. If you're susceptible to stings and bites, you may want to put a sting and bite cream in there. If you're susceptible to blisters, there's some great blister plasters out there which are specifically, so they're not just a band-aid, they're actually just for blisters, and they work really well, and they work really well as a preventative too, so have a think about that. One thing a first aid kit will not contain usually, unless it's a special one, is a snake bandage. So a snake bandage is something that for anyone hiking in Australia is imperative. Basically, on the off chance that you may get bitten by a snake, what happens is you need to use a compression bandage to wrap that limb. So if we use the lower leg for an example, this one here is a great snake bandage because it, first of all, it's 10 meters long, so it will cover a large section of your leg. Ideally, you'd probably want 2 of these, but instead of carrying 2, just encourage your fellow hikers to carry one as well. And the thing that makes this a good snake bandage as well is it actually has little rectangles on it. And those little rectangles, when stretched to the right elasticity, I guess, as you're putting it onto your leg, those rectangles will become squares. And so then you know that you've made it tight enough without it being too tight. And that's always a concern with snake bandages. The other thing that I always highly recommend to add to your first aid kit is one of these. So this here is a survival bag. I'm going to open this one. So this was $5.99 from MacPack, right? So I'll open this now. If there's something that I can put back in later. And a lot of you will have heard of emergency blankets. So it's made out of something similar to that. But what it is an actual bag. So you need to find the entrance to your bag, which I feel like this is a little bit like those bags that you get at the supermarket, and trying to get the entrance to it. So if I shove it across, you will see that once I'm in this bag, so this is a bag that opens up like a garbage bag, and you insert yourself or the patient in it. You can't see my face. Anyway, but you'll see that it is much longer than you are. So it's probably maybe 2.2 meters long. So it means that you can really wrap yourself properly in this bag, and it will protect you from the elements, whether it be wind, rain, cold, etc. Now, I'm not going to subject you to folding this up now. That's something I'll do in front of the TV later. Let's put this aside. For an investment of only a few dollars, that could save yours or somebody else's lives. Those ones are generally single use, because they may rip at some points. So the other option is to spend a little bit more money and get something like this. So this is a Soul Survive Outdoors Longer emergency bivy bag. Again, exactly the same premise, but it's just a little more robust, and you will be able to use it a couple of times. I use this in Norway, not in an emergency, but because I was absolutely freezing one night in my sleeping bag and I couldn't get warm. So what I did is I wrapped myself in my sleeping bag liner, and then I put this bag over me, and then I put my normal sleeping bag on top. Within 20 minutes, I was like I was in one of those oven bags in the oven. I was that hot, I had to get it off really fast. I started sweating, so that's how well they work. So I highly recommend putting a survival bag in your first aid kit. Another thing that is a good thing to have for your first aid kit is I always throw some tissues in mine, and the other thing that I throw in is actually a decent pair of scissors. So often the scissors that come with first aid kits are a bit rubbish, so I will do that. The other thing I throw in there is some sports tape, so if anyone does an ankle or I do an ankle or something like that, it also doubles as really good sticky tape. And finally, the other thing I like to add to my first aid kits, I think it's actually in this one, is some butterfly strips. So you know, the ones that if you were to slice open a finger or something, it holds together like it would a stitches. So I like to put those in there as well. So that covers me. So the only last thing here that obviously is related to first aid kits is the PLB, which is personal locator beacon. I'll talk about that separately. And last but not least, how to treat first aid. So how to treat people. So I'm not going to tell you how to do first aid. Many of you will have done first aid courses. and that's great. But if you're like me, I've done many first aid courses, but I still feel like I need refreshers. So there's actually St. John's Ambulance have an app online which basically do cover off all your first aid scenarios. So, and you can download it so that it works when you're offline as well. So say for instance you're out with a group and somebody's having an asthma attack and you don't know what to do about it. You just open the St. John First Aid app, select asthma attack, and it will talk you step by step exactly what to do in that scenario. So make sure you check that out. In the notes there's also links to other first aid apps as well. Some of you might prefer different ones over others, so make sure you download those to your phone and stay safe out there. Just remember, your health is your responsibility.